All right.
Well,
Now
hit that damn record button.
I hit the right. Yes. Now I hit the damn record button. Okay. Now you can do it again. All right. Go ahead. Go.
This is Peleg Top from the School of Creative High Growth. You're listening to Vroom, Vroom, Veer. Let's go.
Perfect. Wow. And you really brought your A game on that Barry White voice. I love it. Okay.
He was a client of mine.
Really? Wow. Yeah. All right. I'm going to hit stop. I'll be right back.
In my previous life.
In a previous life. The Walrus of Love.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Carrington Smith, thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer and welcome to the show. How's it going?
Doing great today. Thanks for having me, Jeffrey.
Do you like that? As soon as I start talking DJ voice, I get a little bit deeper. You like that? Carrington. It just happens. I don't know why. So you are Carrington Smith. You are at carrington-smith.com. So talk a little bit about what you're excited about over there today.
Yeah. Well, so obviously one of the things I'm excited about is the book that I published, which is called Blooming, Finding Gifts in the Shit of Life.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm really excited about today is one of the stories in the book. We created this thing called the Gratitude Challenge. It stemmed from a relationship with a friend who was kind of going through a rough time.
Okay.
And it has morphed into something else entirely. I literally did a presentation on it last night, and we actually have created a Facebook group for people for the Gratitude Challenge. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Yeah. Actually, what's special about it is we create our own prompts. So similar to your background, we'll ask people things like, if you're on a deserted island.
Ooh, nice.
Right? What things would you miss the most? What people would you miss the most? And then suddenly you know what you're grateful for, right? Because you just recognize that you would miss them.
Yeah.
So it's a great way for people to kind of come into realization for what they're actually grateful for and get into that state of gratitude. And so we have currently 30 different prompts, but we're hoping to get to 365. That's the goal. So
yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Why not more?
Absolutely. Right.
Make that your stretch goal and then keep stretching. That's what I say. Gratitude is awesome.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Well, good for you. That all sounds awesome. And congratulations on the book and the Gratitude Challenge project. That sounds amazing. So good for you. So, okay, this is Vroom Vroom Veer, and you are like tailor-made guest for this show.
That is so true.
Right? Oh my goodness. Yes. So, okay. So let's talk about you growing up. So you grew up on the East Coast. So talk a little bit about growing up on the East Coast.
Yeah. Well, so I was born into this family where my great-great-grandfather founded International Paper Company.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was one side of the family. The other side of the family, my great-great-grandfather on the other side had a seat on the New York Stock Exchange.
Okay.
Yeah. So and he founded a bank and whatnot. So they lived this really crazy life.
I bet.
Of sort of the Great Gatsby kind of. That type of lifestyle. And my grandmother was reared in that and had that life experience. So the predominant trait in our family when you got to my generation was resentment and bitterness.
Okay.
Because the money was mostly gone, but the expectations remained.
Okay. Interesting. Right. You're kind of trying to have to live up to past glories.
Absolutely. So,
but the money's gone. Okay.
The money's gone. My family is absolutely obsessed with maintaining social status, remaining member of all the same country clubs,
right.
Going to all the right schools and all of that. And, it just wasn't happening for most of the family. Some of the family did better, but my particular family
branch.
My mother married my father because, I mean, she literally went to work in a medical school when she graduated from college because she wanted to marry a doctor.
Was this all on your mother's side or your father's side? This was on your mother's side.
This is really on my mother's side mostly.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although the money didn't pass on my father's side either, but anyway.
Okay.
But it was really my mother's side where you really had that resentment and whatnot. Yes.
Right. So, and the chasing of the brass ring, so to speak.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So,
yeah, it's elevated at that level, especially when you have the past glory and the family name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I worry about like Bill Gates' kids.
Totally.
I mean, how can you ever live up to that, right?
Right.
So I mean, at least they have the money to go with it. But it's the generations after these icons that are business titans that really, in some ways, they get kind of screwed up because it's hard to live up to that. So that was definitely a predominant characteristic in my family.
Yikes.
And since we're talking about moving from the East Coast to the West Coast, so my mom looked for a doctor. She found my father, who unfortunately was the very typical doctor who had the God complex and loved to spend money. So
okay, all right. But she was just kind of like checking, like okay, if I can't be rich, then I need to find a lawyer, doctor, or some other professional person. Right.
She was looking for someone who would afford her the same societal status and also the income to support that. And so she decided she was going to marry a doctor. And unfortunately, she chose the wrong one.
Right.
And so something happened. I really don't know exactly what.
Okay.
But
some shenanigans. Is that what you're saying?
Some shenanigans happened. And
while you're on the East Coast, there was shenanigans with the doctor.
Yes. Okay. And we suddenly, are moved from Easton, Maryland, which is outside of Baltimore, to Everett, Washington, which is outside of Seattle. You can't get any further.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And culturally, you're going from like Thurston Howell III, sort of like ascots and escargot.
Yes. to an industrial seaside town. So we're talking paper mills and canneries.
Right.
I mean, it's not at all anything like
that's more
high society.
Yes, it's blue collar. It's right.
Yes. Okay. And so my mom stood out like a sore thumb. I mean, she insisted on wearing the clothes she would wear on the East Coast. And
and that's not going to make a lot of friends.
I mean, it just, we stood out, our family stood out like a sore thumb because my parents were still obsessed with trying to maintain this status, but yet in this other area.
Yeah.
So that was my first veer in life, right?
I bet. I mean, you're just kind of a victim of this whole scenario at this point. I mean, it's easy to feel that way. I mean, but you literally are a victim at that point because all those things, like other kids and parents looking at your mom and dad, they then they look, their nose is already down.
Right.
When they're looking at you, right? And you had nothing to do with it, really.
Well, it's funny. The East Coast people are looking at us funny because we have just departed suddenly, and obviously something's up.
Right.
And the West Coast people are looking at us funny because we just
because you look
in.
Like you're snooty and
yeah.
I get it.
So wow. And then growing up, because of my father and his God complex and his sort of deficits with his personality, let's call it that.
Okay, way. Gotcha.
He would bump into a lot of things and cause problems, and he really, we suffered a lot of emotional, physical, and particularly spiritual abuse because when he got to the West Coast, he also decided to become a fundamentalist Christian, and we bounced from church to church, and
he's still a doctor.
Well, he's still a doctor, but he's retired at this point. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Now he's
no. Yeah. But back then he was still a doctor. Yes.
Oh, yes. And so he would run into problems because, at one point he was actually, he left again under different circumstances after he was accused of laying his hands on someone ostensibly to pray for them.
Oh,
so
wow.
Again, it's one of those things. As a child, I never really understood what happened, but suddenly he was changing jobs. So, So we have these incidents that are never fully explained or understood as a child.
Right.
And but what is understood is the total upheaval and terror that I lived in as a child, constantly waiting for my father to explode at any given moment.
Yikes.
And so I tell stories in the book about some pretty horrific things that happen.
Right.
And
so physical abuse, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, just all of it.
All of it. And honestly, one of the stories that, and this is really not anything, well, it happened to me in that I was present and experienced it, but one of the worst stories in the book, I talk about what he did to our dog. And he got mad at the dog because, I sort of blame myself a little bit. I mean, I shouldn't, but I had a Barbie doll that the dog had chewed up. Okay. And so I was crying and complaining about the fact that my Barbie was missing an arm because the dog had chewed it up. I mean, it was equally my fault because I left the Barbie out where the dog could chew it.
Right.
But
you're a kid. You know.
But I'm a kid. I'm like 6 or 7 years old, right?
Okay.
But my father got so angry at the dog that he dragged the dog outside, and we had just finished building a deck. And so there were all these 2x4s sitting in a wood pile.
Oh my goodness.
And he picked up a 2x4 and he beat the dog until the 2x4 broke in half.
Wow.
And we're all sitting there looking through a window, screaming at him to stop. And he didn't stop until the 2x4 broke in half.
Jeez.
I mean, that's just,
That's
so
just, that's just a sample.
That's just a sample. Yeah.
Wow. Yikes. That's traumatic.
So that was my childhood,
and that's just one of many. Ouch.
Ouch. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the other big characteristics of my childhood was just because of their religious beliefs, how they treated each of us children so differently. So I had an older brother and an older sister, and I was the baby. And because my father believed that the firstborn male was the most blessed and important child, my brother was given the most favor. And then my sister, because she was the second in line, was also given favor. And I was given basically leftovers and hand-me-downs.
Okay.
And I'm not exaggerating that. So just to give you an example. So my grandmother, my mother, and my sister all went to this very elite private boarding school called Miss Porter School in Farmington, Connecticut. It's where like the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, people like that.
Wow. Yes. Very East Coasty. Yes.
Yes. Right. And so they thought it was important that my sister go so that she could carry on the family line.
Right.
But when it came to me, I was not offered that opportunity. So while my sister was at Miss Porter's and my brother was at Stanford, I was asked to transfer to a public high school. And so here she is with the private jet crowd going to debutante balls.
Wow.
And I am in a vacant lot with a keg with these industrial
solo cups,
red solo cup, a keg, and a vacant lot. I mean, so
I can relate to B, not A.
Yeah, so we are 18 months apart in age,
right?
And how different were our life experiences,
right?
And so, and then she went to the University of Southern California, which we affectionately call the University for Spoiled Children,
right?
Right?
Yeah.
And I was not asked, that's putting it nicely. I was told that I was going to be going to college in state. So I chose Washington State University because I wanted to get as far away from my family as possible. And it was on the other side of the state.
Right. Okay.
And so here I am at Wazoo, which is, again, it's in the Palouse, cornfields and my sister's at the University for Spoiled Children.
Yeah.
Living the high life. I mean, it's this contrast, but.
So, and then I kind of feel like now, like, as you say it to me and in my mind now, it sounds like I'd rather be at the solo cup party with the keg, but you resented it, right?
Well, I did at that time.
Of course you did.
I was like, what the heck? How can I get,
right.
Why am I getting,
yeah, you're feeling like the redheaded stepkid kind of feeling.
Yeah,
yes.
My sister's at USC and here I am out in the Palouse.
Right.
And,
you're getting the short stick is the feeling.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and then, this is one of my first veers, and that is after what makes my second really, but
it's one of many. Yes.
One of many. So
we'll call it a big one.
a big one. So when I was at Washington State, I was raped. And
I'm sorry.
Wow. Yeah. And that I detail that in the book. I think it's so important for people to understand that event in my life. But one of the things that happened because of that is that I chose to transfer to the University of Texas at Austin.
Just to get out of there.
Just to get the hell out. Yeah.
Right. Good.
So
that's good.
I transferred to another public college, public university, public Ivy.
Right.
Yes. And that, honestly, Austin is my home. That's where I live now.
Right.
I fell in love with Austin. That was the best gift that came out of that negative experience. And I have to tell you that I am the happiest of the 3 children. And I feel like I'm the most well-rounded.
Sure.
And honestly, I look back and I feel incredibly blessed that I had the life experiences that I did. And I've come to a place where I don't resent it anymore. It just is what it is. It's what happened. It's what I do with what happened that makes the difference.
Totally. You know, and I've heard these stories before. Have you ever heard of the story? Maybe you have. I'm going to give an example. I think the name of the family was Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're like, generations of wealth there, right? So they had a whole generation of kids that just had so much money and they never did anything with it other than just buy shit, build shit. Just they were competing amongst each other to see who could spend the most money.
Yeah.
On stupid stuff. And they were, the end of the story was they were all really sad, right?
Yeah.
Money doesn't make you happy. That's, I think the lesson, I guess, if there's a lesson there, it can.
It doesn't.
No.
Yeah.
It's not like you don't need money. You do need money, but like more money beyond the basics is not going to make you happy.
Well, and there's some kind of mental construct where if you have money and you don't feel that you deserve it because you're not doing anything that gives you purpose or meaning.
Right. And it's been given to you, right? And you didn't work for it. You don't know its value. Yeah. You have no gratitude for, a blessing. Right.
Those are the people that are really sad. You hear that again and again.
Right. Yeah. I know there's, have you ever heard of Chris Sacca?
Yes.
Okay. So he, for those who don't know, he's like a very wealthy angel investor. So, and his parents, I think, were probably pretty well off too, but his parents made him work every summer as a laborer in a different labor situation every summer, So it's like 1 year you're going to work construction and 1 year you're going to, work at farm, just so they would appreciate labor, right? And what people have to do for money,
Yes.
And that can make really good kids. Even if you have money, it's a really good idea.
No, it's really true. I mean, because of where I fell in the pecking order, I mean, there were times that I was working 3 jobs.
Wow.
I mean, I was not given any of this,
Sure.
I was constantly in college, I always had a job. I mean, so that's something where I totally agree with you. I mean, I'm somebody that I wasn't even elevated enough to be a waitress. I had to be a bus person. I mean, that's how, So I would carry these buckets of dirty dishes up and down. I mean, it worked in this one restaurant where it was a 2-story restaurant, up and downstairs.
Right.
Anyway, so I get it. I get it. And I'm a great tipper because of it, because
for sure.
Yeah.
I grew up, I couldn't imagine like a more different childhood for me. My mom never really had a job. She had a job. She worked in a paper mill for a little while, but not very long. She mostly was a babysitter. And then later on, she was a house cleaner. Right. And then my dad worked in a factory, the same factory, for all the way until he retired.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. But it also meant that like I kind of like, learned that, usually getting where I grew up, most people have some sort of labor job, Yeah. Like, and you can still do that, believe it or not, in Upper Peninsula, Michigan and Northeast Wisconsin. You can still have a wife and kids and work a labor job, and it works. The cost of living and, everything else, you can still do that in America, right?
Yeah.
Not many places. But I also knew that wasn't really for me, but I did appreciate it,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up being the computer geek of the family, and I had to leave pretty young. So let's get into some of these stories about maybe get into the weeds a little bit deeper.
Sure.
Yeah. So I don't know where you want to start, but talk about what it was like, some of the abuse stories, because I know I saw on your website you had a broken nose. Let's talk about the broken nose. How did that happen?
Well, that actually happened much later in life.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that happened. Really,
oh, right. We're not done yet. We only got to college.
Yeah, no.
Right. The shit continues. Yes, the shit continues.
Shit.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
right.
Yeah. So actually what happened was I was really, really badly burned by a laser.
What? Wait a minute. How do you get really, really badly burned by a laser?
So I went in for something that's called an IPL photofacial. Any women out there might know what this is, and it's something where they remove the brown spots and it minimizes wrinkles and all of that. So I went in for a beauty treatment.
Gotcha.
And I, very unwisely went to a med spa as opposed to going to a board certified dermatologist.
Okay.
And the person who used this laser on me was not properly trained. And there were many, many things that went wrong. The laser wasn't calibrated correctly. There's really so many different things. But anyway, I ended up with 2nd and 3rd degree burns over my face, neck, décolleté, and shoulders.
Oh my God.
And it, because of that, I developed a secondary bacterial infection, but also I ended up developing, because they put me on antibiotics for that infection and steroids also, I ended up developing a secondary yeast infection on my skin. And so,
yikes.
The scar tissue was so bad that my nose twisted. You say it's broken. It's actually twisted from scar tissue from the burns.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
That's horrific.
That's what you're seeing in those photos. Yeah. Horrible.
Wow. That is horrific.
So this is one of those, I'm cruising along in my career thinking things are going okay. And then out of nowhere, this happens. You don't expect something. You go in for beauty treatment and all of a sudden your life takes a left turn.
Wow.
And I was so stressed from all of it. My hair started to fall out.
My God.
It was basically, I lost a year of my life. The stuff that they had to do to get me back to looking to normal, the treatment is worse than the disease
always,
kind of thing.
Always.
And so, I mean, people look at me now, they're like, they can't believe that I went through that, but that's why I put the pictures in there. You can see what happened.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. But,
horrific. But it literally looked like your nose was punched.
Yeah.
I can't believe it twisted. Oh my God. That's got to hurt worse.
Tissue.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm laughing now, but I'm sorry that happened to you.
No, but
it's horrific.
Honestly, I say that is actually one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Okay. It served as a wake-up call?
Well, it made me realize I had spent my entire life, worried about other things and trying to make other people happy.
People pleasing? Yes.
People pleasing. And when that happened, it really took me down to nothing. I mean, it killed my career.
Stripped everything away.
Stripped everything away. And I just came to the realization about what really, really mattered. And it was just really some core relationships. I mean, I sold my house. I downsized.
Good for you. Yeah.
I really got to a place of where I understood what really, really mattered. And when you get to that place, suddenly everything else falls away and all your decisions are so much easier because you're not worried about making
stupid shit
happy. Yeah, you're just kind of like, these core relationships are really what matter to me, and so I'm going to prioritize those. And it just shifted my perspective on life. And so I do say that's one of the best things that ever happened to me. As horrible as it, painful as it was, it changed me for the better. So
really big silver lining. That Right.
And that is my story. And that is the point of the book. Let's kind of go back to that subtitle.
Yeah.
Blooming, finding gifts in the shit of life. And the reason I gave the book that title is because, first of all, I really want to relate and say, look, it's shit. Like this shit that happens let's call it what it is.
Let's call it what it is. Let's
call
shit.
it what it is. Yes. But it's
painful.
It's also a double entendre. And that is, shit is quite literally fertilizer.
Right.
And it's in the shit. It's by claiming our shit and exploring it that we find the gifts that we need to bloom into our greatness.
That's an awesome metaphor because it's true. Yeah.
It is true. And if you go back, but I think one of the things that in our society, particularly for women, we tend to hide the bad stuff. And particularly
especially now. Right.
Yeah. And so, the Instagram world.
Yes. I had last week, I talked about this. Like, you've got two narrow focused lenses, right? You've got media that if you look at just news, everything's horrible. It's murder, it's death, it's war, right? That's straw number one. Straw number two is on social media and everything is awesome. And I've got airplanes and bikini girls and muscle bound dudes, right? It's just like everything's awesome or murder, right?
Yeah, no, that's honestly, that's so true.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's great that you and I get to tell people, no. It's a little bit of both, right?
Life is messy.
Life is messy and it's not all good and it's not all bad.
But it's what you do with what you've been given and how you perceive it. That's
totally.
The key.
Yes.
And so
you can use your past.
Yes.
Shit included. Yes.
I mean, so my story, the reason I wrote the book was to help people understand how, I guess what I wanted to do was with COVID, I saw people respond to this universal trauma very differently. Everyone sort of had a different response, but you could kind of group them together and say there are people who just wanted to roll around in it and say how awful it was and get wasted and eat to the ends of the earth.
I spent some time there. Yeah.
Well, I think, and I think that's fair, right?
I think we all spent some time there. It was like we were grieving the loss of the old world.
I agree with that. And grieving is important. But there's also the reason that I kind of went through the grieving process pretty quickly is because and got to the other side is because I understood that, I'd already been through so much and this was just something else. I had that emotional resilience, that grit. And because I'd been through all of that and had learned to view these life experiences differently and understood that how I viewed it was going to determine the outcome. I saw this as looking at history. This was like with the Great Depression where, all these Fortune 500 companies were founded during the Great Depression. I saw COVID as an opportunity for growth and new things to happen, for innovation. So my perspective went to, wow, what great things are going to come from this.
What an amazing opportunity.
What an amazing opportunity. And then lockdown, which was so hard for so many people, I realized, or I looked at it as a forced sabbatical, a sudden opportunity to do some things that maybe I'd always wanted to do, but never had the time. And
go ahead.
No, so I wrote a book. I mean, that was one of the things I wanted to do.
That's great. That. At least you got something done.
Absolutely. But so every time life tosses us these bombs, it's what we do with them and how we perceive them that makes the difference.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, one of my things was I kept saying, like, would this matter, whatever this is, right? Like, maybe my hair looks stupid, right? Would that matter if there was a global pandemic? Oh, right. There is one. Right. If you keep asking yourself that, right? Then you realize, like, what you wear to work doesn't really matter. Or what you do for a job doesn't really matter. What other people think doesn't really matter. No.
Wow. Isn't that the truth, though? I mean.
Right.
And how quickly we forget. I mean, already COVID's just behind us a year, basically.
Right, not even.
And people are already forgetting.
Totally.
Yep.
Yeah. The thing is like, I think people are accustomed to seeing shit in their life, but I think one of the key lessons in something that I mentioned, like as we were pre-chatting, is somebody told me you have to go through it when I was relatively young, right? And you don't stop avoiding it, right? Stop avoiding your past. Stop avoiding things you don't like about you, right? Go through it. Somehow get through it, the shit. Yes.
But even more than that, I mean, one of the things that I came to realize after I was raped, I read this book called The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker.
Okay.
And in that book, so Gavin DeBecker, just to kind of give people some background, he formed this company that advises presidents, celebrities, CEOs, VIPs on how to predict violence. So if they're getting all these threat letters, he does threat assessment.
Okay.
And he came up with the idea for this company because of his childhood. He had a mother, he tells stories in this book, The Gift of Fear. He had a mother who actually tried to shoot his stepfather on numerous occasions.
Wow.
And so he learned to be able to predict if she was actually going to do it or not.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And so
that's pretty good. That's pretty good skill.
Right. And so and all the traumas he went through as a child, he, instead of pretending, oh, my life's good, my family's perfect, this stuff isn't happening.
Right.
He claimed those experiences and actually used that life experience to propel him to great success.
Right.
And so if you can use that example and go back and say, okay, with this horrible thing that happened to me, how can I use that as opposed to having it be a tap that drains me?
Right.
How can I use that as a launching pad to propel me forward?
Yeah, like a source of strength.
Yes. So how can I claim that? And people say to me, like, well, how can you do that with rape, Carrie? I mean, come on.
Yeah. Tell us.
Well, the truth of the matter is that, I didn't talk about it for 6 years. I was told not to talk about it. So while I wasn't talking about it, it was draining me. And it wasn't until I did the work and went through therapy and all of that things improved. But what I came to realize as I went back and really re-examined it and claimed it was, people have always told me that I had a quiet confidence.
Okay.
That I would walk into a room and that I would have presence.
Okay.
And I think the reason for that is because when you have survived something so horrific, you do sort of own your own space because you walk into the world like, I got this. I've already been through something so shitty and horrific.
Right.
This is nothing.
Yes.
And so
I've said that so many times.
And that, so that emotional resilience, I think really, it started in childhood, but really strengthened through that life experience. And clawing my way out of it and getting to the other side, I came to realize how strong I was. And using that to propel me forward was really an important thing for me.
That's amazing. Yeah, I tell my story about one of my 3 suicide attempts was eating rat poison. So it didn't work out. But because I had a security clearance and I was in the Air Force, the day after I had rat poison in ice cream, I went to work.
That is the craziest story I've ever heard, I think.
Well, if you could imagine going through a day at work after having rat poison for dinner, it's not the best day of work. But at the end of that day of work, I didn't want to kill myself anymore.
Wow.
Right? Because I was like, well, for fuck's sake, I just survived rat poison.
Oh my gosh.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
And now granted, it's not like I had an epiphany and I was mentally healthy at that moment. But what it did was it turned down the volume of all the bullshit that I thought was important.
There you go.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Suddenly, I just survived something that could have killed me.
Yeah.
And that was really dumb, right? I mean, but depression is depression, right? So I like I said, I wasn't well yet, but I had achieved fuck it status, right?
Well, there's some power in that status, right?
There's a whole lot of power in fuck it.
Yeah.
It's like everything else is just a lot. That's where the power of the shit comes in. It's like level 1 shit power.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah, that's true.
So let's get into these. You were married twice and it didn't work out.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about, let's talk about like you went to college, right? And then you did law school?
Yeah, I went to Tulane Law School.
Right. And then you were a lawyer for a while. So give us the timeline a little bit, maybe, or some highlights of marriage, divorce, and how that played out.
Sure. Yeah. So the first marriage happened right after law. Well, actually, technically, while I was still in law school.
Okay.
It's a great story. So I guess I'll share. It's a really good one. So when I was in law school, this is like, you can't make this stuff up.
No,
story.
no.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So when I was in law school, I had a friend come down to visit me from New York, and I went into the French Quarter, which was something we didn't really normally do as students. We stayed in our uptown area.
Okay.
I went into the French Quarter. This doorman at this bar on Bourbon Street, turns out he was the manager. He was completely taken with me and pursued me to the ends of the earth. And
wow.
I was not interested in dating a bar manager on Bourbon Street, but I was so hungry because my parents had screwed me over. It's a whole other story, but I was suddenly needing student loans, and I could only get credit-based loans, and didn't have enough money, was working, et cetera, but I literally didn't have enough food.
And you're in law school now?
I'm in law school. I literally didn't have enough food to eat.
Gotcha.
And so he would take me for these extravagant dinners, and he really did get to my heart through my stomach. So I didn't think that could happen, but it did.
Gotcha.
But so what happened is during my third year of law school, during finals of my third year of law school, I developed this thing where I was having all this fluid pouring out of one of my ears. And and it wasn't just a little bit, it was like by the cup full.
Wow.
And so I went to the emergency room, and
that's scary.
Strapped me to a table and injected into my spinal tap, whatever. They injected contrast dye in, and they tipped me upside down to see if the contrast dye would be visible coming out my ear. They were trying to determine if it was a spinal fluid leak or if it was something else. So that's why they did this test. But what happened was...
That sounds awful, by the way.
Yeah. What happened was when they injected the contrast dye is they actually hit my spinal cord. So I was in the hospital for 5 days getting shot up with Demerol every 4 hours. So I was in excruciating pain, because when you have that happen, I mean, the pain is just...
through the roof. Yeah.
So I'm in the hospital, out of it because I'm on Demerol, getting shot up with Demerol. And my father's a doctor, right? So I said to Bo, who was the guy I was dating at the time, I said, look, would you mind getting my dad on the phone? I would love for him to talk to the doctor so maybe we can figure out what's going on here. And so he calls my dad, and he says, your dad wants to talk to you. And he hands me the phone, which I put to my good ear. And my father says to me, we just want to let you know that we're not paying for this.
That was his first thing out of his mouth.
That was the only thing out of his mouth.
Wow.
And then he was gone. So my father...
just abandoned you, basically.
Total. I mean, total abandonment. And I mean, they didn't send flowers.
Not even a card.
Not a card.
Wow.
Not a get well soon.
Yikes.
Not a visit. The
My
Christians
goodness.
who are supposed to biblically go visit people in the hospital.
Wow. Yeah.
No. And so
Wow.
what I got was total abandonment. And I refer to that moment as a light switch moment where there's a before and an after. And for years I was trying to
Please them.
Please my parents.
Even though you didn't like them.
No, but it's ingrained in children, right?
Of course. Yes.
And
You want
so
it. You're seeking approval. Yes.
Exactly. And it was
Right.
in that moment that it just was like,
He's not worthy, basically. Is that?
No.
He's not. He's not. Yeah.
So this guy I was dating, Bo, he took advantage of the moment. And literally the day when I checked out of the hospital, I mean, I couldn't even stand up straight. I was walking bent over and he said, "You look like you're one generation out of the jungle."
Bo. Oh, Bo.
He took me straight to the justice of the peace and we got married. And I got to tell you, I don't remember. All I remember is some dirty carpet and some wood panel. I don't remember anything else about that experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were coerced into getting married.
I was. And
under Demerol. Yikes.
Under Demerol. But the punchline of this is, I mean, I was kind of like, well, I don't have anybody else. He wants to take care of me, so why not? So
right. So basically, at that moment, you just replaced your father with another father. Kind of. Symbolically, metaphorically.
But I guess really appropriately, another guy that couldn't support me or wouldn't support
you.
Right?
Sort of like holds it out like okay, if you obey, maybe.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So obviously that marriage was doomed and didn't last long. And it was really just a train wreck from beginning to end.
So is this before or after the rape? Just so we can get things in the timeline.
Right. So the rape happened in college.
Okay. So this happened in law school.
At Washington State.
Gotcha.
And then I transferred to the University of Texas.
Right.
And then I went to Tulane Law School.
Okay. Gotcha.
So this is in law school, the last.
Yep.
The last, yeah. So we were married for, I guess, about 2 years and then got divorced. And I met my second husband about 6 months after I was divorced from the first one. But we dated for 3 years before we got married.
Okay, good.
So
good.
And then we were together for 10 and have 2 beautiful children.
Okay. So that was not so bad. Not all bad.
Not all bad.
Not all bad.
So, but what happened with that is that life throws you curveballs. And that is
right.
We started out having this wonderful marriage and it was good in the beginning, but his father passed away. Mm-hmm. And then because his father passed away, he said, you know what, maybe I do really want to have kids. And so I got pregnant immediately. And after, when I was about to have the baby, his mother was going to come down and help. And she and I were super close.
Okay.
And she ended up having to go in for a heart valve replacement. And it went horrifically wrong. And so instead of her coming down to help, 9 days after my first son was born, she passed away.
Okay.
So my husband had lost both of his parents in less than a year.
That's tough.
And now we have this newborn son. And there were just so many different things that happened. So it steamrolled from there.
Okay.
Kind of that's the highlights, but
right.
So, I mean, he was not emotional. I mean, he lost both his parents and
grieving is hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And we just had a number of other things that happened that kind of snowballed and he just never, I'm a glass half full girl and he's a glass half empty guy.
Gotcha.
And he just kind of felt like he'd been fucked. Excuse my language, but
F-bombs are awesome. All F-bombs are allowed. It's good.
Yeah.
He felt fucked.
And he couldn't get past that. And so as much as I tried to help him get through that, I really began to see how it impacted my children.
Right.
And there were just some really negative things happening. And so
at that point, you have to look out for the kids and you too. Right?
Yeah, I was dying at that point. I mean, emotionally withering because he was so consumed with his situation. There was nothing available to put into the marriage.
Right.
And so, I mean, I was, as somebody that needed that love and support because I never had it from my own family.
Right.
The little that he had been able to give, he no longer was able to. And so I just literally was, I mean, it wasn't a good situation. But.
Yeah, he had to get out. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. So, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
I could tell it's not easy. I get it.
Well, one of the positives of that, though, is one of my friends said to me during that process, she said, you know, Carrie, with adversity comes opportunity.
Right.
And this is the first time I remember having that conversation. So it was like a veer. It was a pivotal moment for me.
Of course.
And I came to realize that if I was to continue to focus on everything that I had lost, meaning, you know, property, big house, you know, all of those things.
Right.
And, you know, my marriage.
Sure.
If I focused on that, I was never going to get out of this spot I was in. But if I instead shifted my gaze to everything that I had gained, which was a clean slate, an opportunity to really not ever worry about pleasing anyone ever again. Like I had fallen into the role I had with my father of always trying to please him. So I had lost myself. I didn't even know like what restaurants I liked or what music I liked to listen to. I didn't know. I basically had lost my identity because
totally, yes.
And I had given it up so easily because that's what I had been taught to do.
Right.
So that self-discovery and creating my own life for myself was really a gift. And so by shifting my gaze from what I had lost to what I had gained, it really transformed me. And it transformed me going forward because every time I hit a speed bump from there on, I began to immediately look for the opportunity in it.
That's great.
And that can get you through that grieving process that much faster and get you to the other side.
And get you through again, it powers you up.
Yeah.
Again, one more again. Yes. Yeah, for sure. I when you said that, like it really hit home for me that because I grew up the people pleaser too. So I totally know what that means. Just recently, like started saying no to stupid shit at work. And it's awesome. You know, it's like one of these things where once you've done it a couple of times, you kind of almost I have to come back now and start being nice again. Because it was just so empowering. You know, like the first time it was something about like really stupid where like one of the bosses said something and I just said no. And they're like, and I'm like, you know, what are you going to do? I'm not going to do that. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And they're not going to fire me because I'm awesome, right?
Yeah.
So that I took away their power just by saying one word. No.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. You know, and I have to say, the first couple of times I did that, I thought, you mean I could have been doing this all along?
Right. Then you want to do it more and more.
I know. Now I'm feeling like I said, I need to start like, you know, have you ever talked to people in recovery? You know, and they're super raw and they just have like no filter, right?
Yes.
I think I'm going through that no filter phase where I have to like rebuild filters.
Yeah. I hear you. Well,
right? Yes. Because you have to put the social niceties back, you know?
You do.
Yeah.
You do. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, hey, Carrie, this has been so fun. We're getting close to the hour mark, so we should start wrapping up. You should come back. I want to get more details and more awesome stories from Carrie. You're awesome.
Awesome.
And us Smiths have to stick together.
We do, yeah. There's so few of us.
So talk a little bit about how people can get in touch with you, find the book, all that stuff.
Sure, yeah. So all of my social media is at Carrington ATX, which stands for Austin, Texas.
Lovely. Love it.
Yes. So you can find me on all, Instagram and Twitter and everywhere else. And my personal website is carrington-smith.com.
Right.
And then, of course, you can find the book on Amazon, but it's also on Audible, and you'll hear me talk.
Oh, wow. You said you told the story yourself.
I did.
That might be an Audible book I want to get.
Yeah.
I like your voice, so that would
Thank you.
Was that a lot of work? Was that hard?
You know, they have it down to a science. I mean, I recorded it in 3 days.
Oh, that's not bad.
And yeah, but
okay. And you did it at home?
No. I flew out to LA.
You did it in a booth?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not so bad.
Yeah, but
3 days.
Emotionally, when you tell your story, and when I read the book out loud, you relive it. Yeah, and so it was emotionally draining. Yeah,
I bet, but it makes for a better book.
100%. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot.
If you had paid somebody to read it, it wouldn't have the impact.
Well, it's interesting just by using pauses and hearing the emotion in my voice. It does, in my mind,
I bet you're catching, you're hitching, it's like you're reliving it in the moment. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Good for you. Congratulations. You're awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for hanging out with me and sharing your pretty scary shit.
Well, this has been great.
Thank you. And you have a great day.
Awesome. You too.
All right.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.